to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Well, welcome back to another episode of Inside Personal Growth. I have a very special guest joining us from Palo Alto on the other side of the screen. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, I never know Bill anymore. The last podcast you and I did back in July of 2018 about your book, and I was pulled it up for him this morning, Designing Your Life book and workbook, was in 2018, and we weren't even doing video podcasts then. So as you mentioned, the pandemic changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And this was one of them. Bill, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a little bit, cold and foggy, but it's a good day.
Yeah, it's always a good day to give blessings and gratitude when you wake up every day. That's a good day, right? So thank you for that. So for my listeners, it's podcast 671, and I'm going to tell the listeners a little bit about you, Bill, because we're here to talk about a book you have that's coming out in February called How to Live a Meaningful Life. And I don't know if you have a copy of that book there or anything to show the listeners, but if you do.
Hold on a second.
Yeah. All right.
Boom, 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 boom. It's going to look a lot like this.
There you go. Well, I would say that is. Now, this is a Simon & Schuster book. Is that correct?
Yeah, Simon & Schuster's our new publisher.
All right. Well,
it's coming out in February. We are really excited.
You should be. And I'm going to let everybody know as well the website that they can go to get you at. Now, where do you want them to go for the website? Because I was up there and
it's really simple. It's designingyou.life. So designingyou.life. You'll get to our website. I'd sign up for our newsletter. It's called Fully Alive by Design. And it'll have other things about the book release, and we'll post things like this amazing interview.
Well, and you're also doing certifications. And now is the certifications on the older course, the Designing Your Life, are you going to be doing certifications on this one as well?
We will update. Yeah, we do. When the first book came out, Designing Your Life, we got a lot of requests from coaches, life coaches, personal coaches, executive coaches. Hey, could we use these tools, in our coaching practice? And we said, sure, here's the book, go for it. And they said, no, we want you to train us because we want to make sure we do it right. So we put together a coach certification. If you're already a coach and you wanted to add in new tools from Designing Your Life. And we wrote a second book that came out right at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020 called Designing Your Work Life. So if you wanted to use any of those tools, we have a coaching certification. It's about 3 days and you get a badge. We put you on our website. And we will be updating the coaching certification with all the new tools. There's lots of new stuff in the How to Live a Meaningful Life book. And so that'll all be part of anybody who's a certified Designing Your Life or Meaning Designer coach will have all those tools. And Dave and I do the training ourselves.
Well, I've been to the website, and we're definitely going to put it in the show notes below. So everybody go to the show notes below here if you're watching this on YouTube. So again, Bill, thanks for coming back. And that feeling in life is kind of fine. You check the boxes, you pay the bills, as we say, even succeeding with external measures. But then something's missing, as you say. You wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and say, is that all there is? There used to be a song by Patty somebody. She used to sing, is that all there is?
Yeah.
And you find yourself with what should be your dream job, good money, impressive title, but you're still searching for something more, you say. And we tell our listeners you're really not alone. And I think the key to this book is building community. You're not alone. And the website is designed to build the community and to provide you with support. So sign up for that newsletter. And more importantly, let's just let everybody know you're not broken. This is a human condition, finding meaning in life. You're definitely not broken. But My guest today, Bill, is the executive director of design program at Stanford University, co-founder of Life Design Lab, and as we've said, in New York Times best-selling book called Designing Your Life, which I'm sure this next one's going to be a New York Times bestseller as well, which has helped millions of people around the world approach life with the mindset and tools of a designer. So he's back on the show to talk to us about how to live a meaningful life, subtitle, ... using design thinking to unlock purpose, joy, and flow every day. Co-authored, by the way, with his really, really great co-author, Dave Evans. I don't want to leave him out of the picture because he has as much significant interest. And do watch their video at the website. They have a video where the two of them kind of go back and forth as to why they wrote this book.
Yeah.
What I love about this book is that Bill's work in general is it's not just another self-help book. It's more of a manual promising you, or a manual. It's not a manual either. Promise yourself that you just meditate enough and it'll get easier for you. This is a design book. It's practical. It's actionable. It's grounded with real stories and real people who've sat in Bill's office hours at Stanford wrestling with these questions. And I think that's what's important. So we're going to talk about why being fully alive is possible right now, today, even in, as you might call it, boring Tuesdays, or even when the world feels heavy, because all you got to do is turn on the news and look at social media, and you're going to see heavy stuff everywhere. And it's really, some of it very sad, what's recently happened. But Bill's going to perk us up this morning, and he's going to share some practical tools, things that you can actually do to start experiencing more meaning in your life. Um, and I want to make a note here. You know, what makes this book particularly poignant is timing. Bill and Dave wrote this in their later years in life, like me. I'm in my 70s, 60s, 70s, after experiencing some losses. Bill lost his mother and father and mother-in-law in a real short period of time. And Dave lost his wife, Claudia, to cancer.
Yeah.
So these things, when we look at our finitude, folks, is really an important thing to take into consideration. So, Bill, welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. Thanks for taking this time. And let's just start off this way. You and Dave have been partners for so long doing this and writing, teaching, informing, acquiring additional wisdom about this. Why now? Why this book about meaning? And why do you think this is so important in these tumultuous times that we're living in? Because it almost feels like turmoil at times.
Boy, it sure does. And Greg, thanks for having me back. You know, we're user-centered designers, right? Design thinking is this user-centered approach to solving problems. And so after the first couple of books, thought we were done, and we were, we still get a lot of requests to talk about the ideas in, how can you use a design mindset to improve your life. But we're also talking to people, and lately, because of the sort of chaos in the world, the loneliness epidemic. I think the Surgeon General last year said the loneliness was the number one health problem in America. Our students are reporting they really are searching for more meaning. They want to have meaningful jobs or meaningful engagements in the world. They want to have impact, but they weren't finding it. And we also were looking at how people are kind of desperate for community, and there's not a lot of community anymore.
Right.
People they used to have their church or their neighborhood, but those things have for some people have kind of disappeared. So we were looking at the meaning crisis, the sort of meaning and identity crisis, the wanting impact but couldn't find it problem, the issue of loneliness, which is really, really, really hitting particularly the younger generation pretty hard.
The
And
students
then
you teach.
yeah, all the chaos in the world, right?
Yeah.
With with politics and everybody in an echo chamber and everybody shouting at everybody. And then, the climate crisis and the economic crisis, you name it. I mean, it's all over the place. So we thought, all right, we went out and we started talking to people and we said, what do we need? And we're really clear again that we're designers, we're not philosophers. And we start off the book by saying, if you're looking for the meaning of life, sorry, that's a philosophical question. We probably can't help you. Go find a, philosopher or maybe or a priest or a rabbi. But if you're looking for more meaning in your life, which seems like a small change, but it's a really big change, meaning in your life, we think we got some design tools to help you with that. And so that started us on the path of trying a bunch of stuff. We always try this stuff with ourselves, with our readers that we know, and also with our students. So we prototype everything. That's a designer's mindset. And we started seeing how these ideas could really transform someone's sense of meaning and finding impact and all these things. Because, a lot of times what you find when you do the design exercises, people are kind of asking the wrong question. And if you can reframe the question, you get better solutions. If you can think about a problem a different way, maybe, bring a design mindset to it, or just turn the problem upside down, you just get more solutions and more solutions that are really satisfying. So the more we got into it, the more we thought, okay, there's another book here, probably our last book, because we really wanted to address not just designing your life and finding ways to make it better, but how do you answer the question of getting more meaning in your life? And we also, because this is a big question, this is a 3,000-year-old question of wisdom, traditions, and religions, and people have been talking about, philosophers have been talking about it for a long time. Everybody thinks it's hard. Oh, I need a meditation practice. I'm going to have to, spend a year developing a meditation practice, or I need to sit on a rock and stare at the sun and wait for enlightenment to come, or I need, I need to do something to change my life to get, and I know I'm going to have to do this big transformation, and it's going to be hard. And in fact, when we looked at it, it's much easier than you think.
Yeah.
It does require you take some actions, but it's easier than you think.
I think the way that you and Dave approach it gives a very practical and pragmatic way to look at this. I think, look, I do podcast interviews on spirituality, wellness, business, and personal growth. And I have all kinds of authors on here who've tried to answer that question about meaning in life. Okay.
Right.
What I like is that you gave these big meaning reframe. That's what you call it. You challenged the idea that meaningful life is one that finally makes a big enough impact. Okay. The question is, what is the impact is different to everybody. I know I have a nonprofit. I go out and work with the homeless. That's how I give back. Every show that I do, where authors make donations, I go out in the streets, give away gift cards, and then help soup kitchens. But instead, you say it's about being fully alive every day. And I think the important thing is, I say this about somebody like me or anybody. It's so easy to pick up our checkbook and write a check to a nonprofit.
Right.
But it's more difficult to go out on the streets, go build a building. Like, we used to see on, when I'm trying to think of the president's name that passed away, where he was building all the houses.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter. So this feels countercultural, kind of especially for achievement-oriented people. So can you unpack the impact mindset that's actually setting us up for disappointment? Because, I say writing a check, it goes way down the list. Actually getting involved is the thing that gives you fulfillment. It gives you love. You express your love. You get more meaning out of something like that. You give compassion, right?
Absolutely. And you have a sense of transcending yourself, doing something other than what your ego requires. And we'll get into that because that relates to some of Maslow's ideas. But the big idea for us in the book, the run big reframe is, okay, look, there's really just one world, but we can't experience everything all the time. So we say, look, there's really two things going on in the world. There's the transactional world. Like you said, I can write a check, go to work, just get stuff done. In the transactional world, I'm just getting stuff done. But right underneath that, kind of like, imagine like, an aquifer of liquid running just below the surface is what we call the flow world. And flow is more than just this thing that Haley Csikszentmihalyi described as, when you're the task, how hard the task is equally measured by your skill, and then you go into flow or the zone. And if we look at the recent neuroscience, it's much bigger than that. But anyway, so we got the transactional world and the flow world, and impact exists completely in the transactional world. You do something, you have an impact, perhaps it's even a measurable something, and it feels good for a little while, and then what have you done for me lately? Impact isn't the place you can find a lot of meaning. It's good to have impact for sure, but if you put all, as Dave says, if you put all your meaning eggs in the impact basket, you're going to be, you're going to be a little bit disappointed, because impact is a transaction. It's an action in the world. Where meaning comes from is in this deeper kind of set of experiences that happens only in the flow world. And another way of thinking about it is transactions. If you think about your brain, constantly making decisions, you're thinking of the next thing you want to do. What do I do after this thing, after this podcast? Oh, I've got to go do this. I've got to do this. Or I'm thinking about yesterday. Oh, I didn't get that done. All of your transactional brain is really either thinking about things in the past or thinking about things in the future. And it doesn't spend very much time right here in the present. And the flow world is entirely right here in the present. People have the experience of flow as being timeless because it's all about the present moment. So if you reframe impact and you say, all right, impact is great, but I'm not going to find a lot of meaning in it because it's transactional. I need to think about finding my meaning a different way. And that's the big meaning reframe. The meaning is found in these particular moments of connection to other people, connection to a mission, connection to your heart. And that's where the meaning is located. So don't just, all my students and the people that I coach are telling me, I want to have an impact. I don't want to just have a regular job, and I want to have an impact. And I'm going to go, first of all, jobs and impacts, and, the things that you're doing for homeless people, for charity and stuff, I guess you could call it a job, but that's not really why you do it, right? You do it for a different reason. And so if we're looking to find that kind of soul nourishing meaning, we got to get out of the transactional world.
Totally. And you tell that so well, because, I can't tell you how many times Stephen Kotler's been on this show, the guy that did the flow genome projects and wrote all the books and so on. And I distinctly remember him, what he was saying is that neurologically, when you look at the neuroscience, the endorphins that are released and the oxytocins that are released to us when we're doing something meaningful is far substantial. It's like people say, well, I get a runner's high. When I actually finish that high, I've released that. So we're actually seeing, when we're doing something meaningful and purposeful and with joy and we're in flow, that literally is changing our physical body. Actually, Dr. Stephen Post was just on here that just wrote a book called Pure Love, and he does work at Stony Brook and with doctors and all kinds of people. And the thing that you find is that when you go out to the streets, or you use your hands, or you're doing something like Yvon Chouinard has done with his company, and you go, hey, we're going to do something really impactful. It's impactful but meaningful, right?
Yeah.
So people might not know this, but Patagonia is transitioning into, believe it or not, going to be a food company, because they don't believe they can make the difference with the clothes, nor can they source them the way they need to source them. A lot of people don't understand that, but that's what's going on. And so when you look at regenerative agriculture, just as kind of an example, we're saying, wow, how can we change the world? And I love the concept you introduced. You call it the scandal of percularity. Is that right? particularity. Sorry,
Particular.
particularity.
Yeah.
The idea that we only experience ultimate things like love, beauty, and truth in specific finite moments.
Right.
Why do you call this scandalous, and how does accepting this change on how we approach in our daily lives? Because I think
Right.
we're trying to address people right now that are going, okay, Bill is the thought leader here. I need to learn something.
All right. Well, the scandal of particularity is actually, I think we didn't invent that phrase. It comes from philosophy and a little bit from the theological world. But the notion is, we're finite creatures and we have finite brains and we are working along in this transactional world. But every once in a while, we can be in the flow world and we can experience something that's deeply meaningful. And these things you talked about, the neuroscience to that, increased oxytocin, which is sort of the connection, love chemical, increased sense of dopamine, of happiness and fulfillment. All these things will happen in a specific moment. And so we can't actually experience ultimate love. Well, I guess if you sat on a rock and stared at the sun for a very long time, maybe you could experience the oneness of the universe. That's possible. But in the more like, hey, what can we do today mode? It's like, okay, I can't experience ultimate love, but I can bake that that little cupcake and give it to my grandson for his birthday and watch his face light up. And that's a transcendent moment. That's a moment that transcends my ego and my need for, whatever. And I just notice and sort of savor in the moment of his joy. So that the ultimate is going to be found in the intimate, in these intimate small moments where we can get a glimpse of the ultimate love, the ultimate truth, the ultimate beauty. So, I practice this just walking to when I'm up in the city, I walk to the train and I take the train down to Palo Alto to commute to Stanford. And I was just walking down the other day and I noticed, wow, there's this bush and it's suddenly bloomed with purple flowers. Why is it blooming in December? That's crazy. But stopping for a moment and noticing how beautiful and how intricate and how deep this purple is a moment, right? It's a finite moment. Although when I really get into it, it's almost an infinite moment because once you're really in the present moment, time stands still, right? So you can experience it a different way. And then I walk on and I've had a little bit of a particular moment of beauty. And the reason I think, people, theologians call it scandalous is this like, isn't it crazy that we can only experience the ultimate in these little tiny chunks? But when you learn to inhabit those little tiny moments, they truly are, uh, they're one of the places where you can find a little bit of a moment of meaning. And so
That-
in the book, we teach you to be a moment designer, right? How do you design moments? Some which just occur like that. I'm walking down the street, I see this beautiful flower. I stop it, I pay attention in a certain way, and suddenly I have this moment. Or I actually design a moment. I design the moment of, hey, I'm going to bake this cupcake. I'm going to take it to my grandson's birthday party and I'm going to give it to him and we'll see what happens. I don't have any expectation, but probably there's a moment in there. And
How would you advise
it's
people?
just funny that that's the way you find the infinite, right?
Well, it is true. You're absolutely correct. When you get to be a little older, one of the things we do is we slow down.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this world has done with technology, you take AI and all the things we're experiencing these days, and we're moving at such a rapid pace. It doesn't matter if it's our iPhone or our iPad or this or that or something else that's
Right.
distracting us
Right.
from having those moments
Right.
that it requires us because, look, how many times have you walked down a street and someone just almost walks into you or has walked into you because they have downhead syndrome, right? I call it downhead syndrome.
Yeah.
They walk into a light post, right? And because they're so distracted, they don't even see that flower. Now, you mentioned in the book Achieving Brain and the Awakening Brain, and it
Yeah.
sounds neurological. Are are these actual different brain states? And if modern people are so stuck in achieving mode, because look, This is a world where you're measured by how much you achieve.
Right.
Okay. That's the way we're measuring. Did you make enough money? Did you build something new? Did you do something better? So
Right.
what's the practical path to activating an awakening brain, in your humble opinion?
Right. Well, you had mentioned several of the scientists you've had on to talk about stuff, and I teach at Stanford. I'm not allowed to make stuff up. I gotta have research behind it. I can't just stand in front of a classroom and say, "Bill thinks you should do this." So, actually, the transactional world and the flow world was our invention, but its base it was then we discovered Dr. Lisa Miller. She's out of Columbia. And she's a psychologist and neuroscientist, and she wrote a book called The Awakened Brain, where she's kind of refined remember back in the old days, we had left brain and right brain and drawing on the right side of the brain or right side and all that. That was kind of like, well, the right brain is the creative brain, and the left brain is the analytical brain. It's a nice model. It's not entirely accurate. I think what she's done is she's put a much finer filter on the research. And she said, no, really, there's two systems in the brain. Both sides of the brain are involved all the time, but the two systems are the achieving brain, which is the transactional brain, prefrontal cortex, get stuff done, make decisions, executive function, da, 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 da. And we're in that part of the brain all the time because that's the part of the brain that talks, essentially. That's where all the talking in our heads come from.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and it's easy to think, well, if it's not talking, it's not intelligent, or if it's not talking, it's not me. But in fact, there's the whole other side of the equation, which she calls the awakened brain, and that's where context and meaning and emotion and other things are found. And in that system, the reward system is based on presence, is based on attention, is based on being here and in here and in the now. And so it's the same thing. It's a neurological definition of there's a transactional world, there's a flow world. They're neurologically, accurate descriptions of two ways that the brain functions. And what you want to do is have all of it functioning all the time. You don't want to just be over indexed on all the transactional stuff, because our world is designed, like we say, our world is designed around achievement. It's designed around stealing your attention. I apologize. I teach my young design students at Stanford how to write really, really sticky apps based on, the latest science of attention. But remember, people who are monetizing your attention aren't on your side.
That's
They're
true.
on the side of making money.
They are on the side of making money. And I
So
think
you got to take control of that, right?
yeah. And right in your own school, Stanford, your alma mater, your whatever, I had back in May of 2024 an interview on the neuroscience of manifestation with Dr. Dottie. If he passed away recently, but he was at your Center for Compassion.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that interview was so impactful. I bring it up for this reason. Here's a man that manifested so much in his life, yet then went to the depths of the bottoms of everything and had to rethink everything, and then got involved with your Center for Compassion and Altruism, right? And led that department. And I think for people that are listening right now, his book called The Magic Mind, Neuroscience of Manifestation, How to Change Everything. I'd recommend that you maybe go back and listen to that podcast, because it's actually very important here as well. So now look, you have 5 designer mindsets, and that is kind of at the heart of this book. And I don't want to miss that part from you, Bill. So you lay out these 5 mindsets. You call it the designer's way: wonder, availability, radical acceptance, fully engaged and calmly detached, and create your world. That last one really kind of intrigues me. Fully engaged and calmingly attached. Those seemed like opposites. Okay? How do you hold both at the same time? And for me, that I would love to know, because it's going to be a breakthrough for me.
All right. Well, just a quick comment. Doty's work on manifestation, I think, takes it out of this sort of woo-woo new age, oh, you can have anything you want, just sit on the couch and manifest it, down to the neuroscience of what you're doing is you're changing your attention.
Right.
and what you pay attention to. And we know from all the science that we don't really see what we're looking at. We only see what we're looking for. And so his whole model, which is based on, on real science, is that depending what you're looking, you change what you're looking for, and probably you'll find it. But in terms of the mindset of, fully engaged and calmly detached, right? It's interesting because what I took a class long time, long time ago when I was an undergraduate at Stanford, when dinosaurs still roamed the campus. Um, I took a class from a guy named Ron Howard, and he was the professor who invented decision analysis. It's a field, a mathematical field of making decisions. But one of the big ideas he said was, look, the quality of a decision does not equal the quality of the outcome. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Of course, you make a good decision, you expect a good outcome. He says, yeah, but here's the thing: you make a good decision with all the information you can have in the moment. And then in the future time, when the decision comes true or doesn't come true,
Right.
new data has emerged. So don't hold yourself responsible in the present for data that you could only have known in the future. Classic example I use in my class is like, okay, at the end of class, Stanford's only 25 miles from the beach. Hey, at the end of class, I looked it up. It's going to be a beautiful day in Half Moon Bay. Who wants to have office hours on the beach? Jump in the car. Let's go. We go. The data said, the app said it's sunny. The webcam said sunny. We get to Half Moon Bay. It's foggy and it's raining. Did I make a bad decision? No, I made a good decision based on all the information that was available. Can I hold myself responsible for information that only occurs in the future? Like when I get there, it turns out something is different. No, I can't hold myself responsible. So here's the thing. So many times, our students have the fear of missing out, or did I make the right decision? I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And then all the data on this, all the psychology and science of this is, be fully engaged in your decision-making, in your world, fully engaged in what's going on, including not just your cognitive intelligence, but your emotional intelligence. How does it feel? How am I feeling right now? And is this the right thing for me to be doing? And also you mentioned when you go out and you walk around and you hand things out when you're using your body, your hands, your
Right.
locomotion, that's kinesthetic intelligence, and it's critical. We are embodied creatures. We're not just a brain on a transport mechanism. We're fully embodied creatures. So when you invoke your kinesthetic intelligence, your emotional intelligence, your intellectual intelligence,
What
and
about
fully
intuition?
engaged.
What about when we were able to access, which all the great thinkers about intuition, I wrote a book on it, and
Absolutely.
I look at that as a very important element in getting to my inner Yoda.
Yeah.
Right? So
Right.
the inner Yoda is gonna tell me or inform me, right? Whether, discernment. It's like, hey, do I do X or do I do Y? How am I discerning against these? Frequently listening to the voice, Bill Gates will tell you, Steve Jobs told you, Warren Buffett tells you, listen to your intuition, right?
Absolutely.
Every great businessman around has said, listen to your intuition. Where do you kinda set on that scale? I'm sure you're
Oh,
in
I
there.
think you mentioned the word discernment. We in the class, in the UL class at Stanford, I just finished up last week. We define discernment as knowing, ways of knowing or making decisions with more than just one way of knowing, not just your decision making, prefrontal cortex brain, but your intuition. Jung, the famous, Carl Jung psychologist, said intuition
Right.
is a form of perception, but it's perception that comes to us via the unconscious. So we have to dig a little deeper to hear our intuition, right? I mean, not everybody
Right.
pays attention to it because it's not the part of the brain, again, that talks and rationalizes. Intuition's critical, but here's where that's all by fully engage your intuition, fully engage your emotions, be fully engaged in your life and your decision making. And then the calmly detached part is, don't be worried about the outcome. You have no control over the
I love
outcome.
it.
The outcome will happen in the future with data you don't have available, and it might come out exactly the way you want.
I
And
love a good Buddhist. You sound that's
yeah,
a very good
exactly.
Buddhist
Fully
statement.
detached from the outcome.
Non-attachment to the outcome, and I
Because all that's where all the anxiety. My students are so full of anxiety. What if I made the
yeah.
wrong decision? I'm like, you can't know. Make a fully engaged decision. Make a decision with discernment. Listen to your intuition. Do
And
the
then let go.
possible. And by the way, you got to practice that. Intuition isn't just like, oh, it's shouting, take door number 2, take door number 2. Sometimes your intuition is hard. You got to sit quietly and listen, right?
Well, like you said, you have to be calmly detached.
Yeah.
So
That's
for you to be able to hear that, whether it's meditation, contemplation, a walk in the woods, a walk on the beach, I don't care where it is. The point is you have to get detached from all of the what do they say in meditation? You got thousands of thoughts coming in and they're processing, and you're trying to sit there and be quiet, and they're all telling you to do this, that, and the other thing. It's the noisy mind, right? It's like a noisy
a
world.
monkey brain.
That monkey brain is there, and it's going to be there, and you have to learn how to calm it and just let the thoughts come and then let the thoughts go. Let them come in, then let them go.
Yeah, the thoughts
Right?
will arise and
Right.
then it will disappear. And the
Yeah.
and the anxiety is caused by attaching to outcomes you can't control or situations you can't control. And you mentioned a walk in the woods. There's a lot of neuroscience around that. The Scandinavians do forest bathing because
Right.
they know that a walk in the woods will create a dopamine, oxytocin cycle, not an oxytocin, oxytocin cycle, and then that will generate a brain that is more in tune with its own intuitions.
Now
So,
you
this stuff we're starting to get some pretty good research on why thousands of years of tradition why it actually works. Why does a walk in the woods better than, sitting on a couch and worrying?
yeah.
Um, it's
It
it's
it
really
well,
gotten yeah, and we like to
you
pull that stuff forward because, designers like to work with data. I would say design has to start in reality. What is the reality of how your brain is processing things? Well, study the research and realize if you're just trying to think your way to a solution, you're not gonna get the best solutions.
well, I love this statement. You said the foundational concept beneath all of this is you are a becoming.
Yeah.
Not a being, but a becoming. This suggests there's no final destination, no ultimate arrival at meaning. I love that.
Yeah.
For listeners who are exhausted from always striving, because that is really the challenge, why is this idea actually liberating rather than discouraging? So for many, that thought might be somewhat discouraging, but I will tell you, everybody listening, you've listened to my show for years, humbly, it is not discouraging, it's liberating.
Yeah.
Tell them why, from a design standpoint, you see it liberating.
Yeah, and we're on video, but I can't show you a diagram. We have a little diagram in the book, and it's a little circle. It says be, do, become. So I am me, I'm being me. And then we're doing this podcast, and you're going to say something like you just said about discernment or about some of these other researches. And I'm going to go, that's really interesting. I'm going to go figure that out. I'm going to read that book. And I read that book and I become a slightly different Bill. I have new knowledge now. I have a new framework for thinking about discernment and decision making. So I'm a becoming. I'm always in the process of becoming the next version of me, and it's not an achievement oriented. Oh, I've got to become the best possible version of me, because I know there's so many different. We know that there's more aliveness in you than one life will ever allow. And if you think about the multiverse or anything else, it's like there's so many possibilities. I mean, if I grew up in Boston, and if I'd gone to the school on the East Coast instead of school on the West Coast, everything would have been different. So
Right.
I know becoming is just the process that I'm in. It's not about achievement. It's just about, it's like the Zen concept of the Tao. It's like the way that can be followed is not the true way. Just be and become the person you're meant to become. Listen carefully to the signals from intuition and your discernment. But we're always a becoming, and so there's always a chance that the next we're designers, so we believe the next version will be better, right? We're always trying to design a better version, but it's not about achievement. It's just about being in the flow. So just be in the flow of becoming, and that means there is no ultimate best you. You're not gonna find it and then you're good. There's no ultimate best meaning. Meaning evolves and becomes richer and deeper the more you experience it, but it's all in the flow of becoming.
I think when you design something, and today in particular, I'll use the iPhone as an example, it's just new features. I like to think of us as taking off a robe and putting on a new robe, and that new robe has a new feature. We literally constantly are reinventing who we are if we're aware and awake. And I love these practical tools that you have in the book. You offer specific tools throughout the book. One that caught my attention for years I've gone to meditation retreats on the work of silence with
Uh-huh.
Dr. Joel Michelle Levy. And I would spend 3 days in silence. And the word that came up for me was wonderment. Now you say put on your wonder glasses.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean? And how do I actually do that on a regular Tuesday morning like now? Because
Yeah.
when I left the Orcas Islands, I would always come back to the mainland and I would go, whoa, the real world was where I was, not where I went to after I got off the boat at Anacortes,
Right.
right? Because it was just like this, it hits you in the face like, oh my gosh, I've been in silence for eating vegan food and doing whatever for 6 days. And now I'm coming back to this world of McDonald's and all these people rushing around.
Right.
And
Right.
my thought to you is, how do I find those wonder glasses?
Right. Yeah. Winter glasses. It's lovely to have a retreat like that because it's kind of a nice reset, right? It resets your senses. It gives you
Yeah.
more connection to your own becoming. So, but these aren't wonder glasses per se, but I'll put them on because we did a picture
Oh, I love it.
paper of my wonder glasses. Um, and,
I
and it,
love
it,
those glasses.
it's just about
Can
seeing the
you
world
see
through it.
through those? Can
Yeah,
you
I can
see?
kind of see through those. They're
Okay.
they're a little hard, but so it's about seeing the world through a different lens. Is the metaphor, right? So you can do this anywhere. In the book we described, sit on the couch and look around the room. And you're in your normal transaction brain, you're just looking, okay, there's my iPad, there's some I got to change the light bulb in that thing. It's out, blah, blah, blah. So I'm making lists. And then if I employ my curiosity glasses, like, oh, well, look at that. I haven't read that book in a long time. I wonder that's interesting, or this and that, looking around the world and the room and seeing things. And then we describe wonder as curiosity
Mhm,
plus mystery. Like,
mhm.
huh, what is it, even in a very prosaic environment, my studio or whatever, there's some mysteries, things that happen that I don't understand. It's easy out in nature. You can look at anything and go, how does that seed become that oak tree? How does that little bud turn into this gorgeous rose? There's so many things that are marvelous and mysterious, and then when we get curious and we add mystery, we get to wonder. And wonder is, there's a couple of people have written books on the neuroscience now of wonder and awe, that there are circuits in the brain for experiencing the world in this holistic way where you sort of grok the whole thing and you're in awe or wonder. A beautiful sunset can put you there. But almost anything can put you there with this mindset. So think about curiosity plus mystery, and then look around the room and go, gee, I don't actually know how fluorescent lights work. I guess it's a gas, and the gas glows when it gets. That's so interesting, or I'm looking at a book I hadn't read in a while. And have you read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act?
No, but I know Rick Rubin.
Yes, you do. I mean, and that's fantastic. That book is great, and it's full of wondrous ideas. He talks about, the creativity comes from outside us in this sort of sphere of the creative world, and we just access it. We bring it down
Yeah.
into reality, but that it is always there. And whether you did it or somebody else did it, somebody would have written, um, you know, and yesterday.
Well, the
If it wasn't
spontaneity.
her fault, if it wasn't, if Pa hadn't written it, somebody else would have written yesterday. So wonder is this experience of the world which combines curiosity and mystery, and it's available all the time. So when you put on your wonder glasses, you start to see that there's more depth than you thought.
Well, let me ask you this because you mentioned it, Bill, early on in the interview, and you said loneliness and lack of community.
Yeah.
And I've had Charles Vogel on the show a couple times, a guy from Berkeley who writes about community,
Yeah.
who is just literally fascinating. I also recently had on David Holman, orchestrating connection. And you
Yeah.
wrote the concept of formative community is fascinating. You distinguish it from social gatherings and collaborative work. You say formative communities gather around intent, not content,
Right.
and are about becoming better together. Given how isolated so many people feel out there right now, okay, whether they've allowed this political environment to divide them or something else in their family or community, especially post pandemic, what's
Yeah.
one practical step that Bill Burnett would give someone to build or join a formative community? I would assume that with your new book here, you've already built a community, but you're going to build a stronger community now. And again,
Yeah.
look below for a link to the website to get the newsletter. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll have the link there. So speak with us about it because I think this whole concept, Bill, uh, I wouldn't say you've been isolated, but you've worked on a university campus for some time.
Yeah.
You have been surrounded by like minded people.
Yeah.
You have worked in an environment which has constantly been fertilized with great ideas and great concepts. A lot of people leave the university, go to work for a company, which are many of my listeners, or form their own company. And after that, they're frickin' alone.
It's even harder. You're the entrepreneur because then you're really alone, right? Because
Yeah.
everyone's looking at you like, hey, you're supposed to know the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need, there are lots and lots of science around, we're social animals, we're pack animals. We need to be in community with other people. And, as we said with this, there's three reasons people get together. They get together to have a good time. You could have a group that just gets together and does bar hops every Friday night. That's a good time group. Fantastic. You get together to get something done, like you're the PTA or you're the Elks Club or whatever. It's social, but it really has a mission. We want to get something done, do something charitable. And a formative community is really different. It's where we get together to help each other get better, to become the better version of ourselves. And you form that community around what we call a focal question. And
Mhm.
so everybody's going to have a different question. I'm trying to figure out how to become, the best parent I can be. And someone else is trying to figure out how to become an entrepreneur because they have this urge to start something. And someone else is maybe on a different quest, a different spiritual quest or something. But we all get together to help each other with our focal questions. We get together to help each other, get better. And all it takes is the intention to support each other. And that's really what people are looking for, I think, when they have communities. They're not looking for an argument. They're not looking necessarily for everybody to agree with them. They're just looking for a place where they can be the becoming that they are and become the next iteration of themselves. So, both Dave and I have those kinds of communities. Dave has one that's very old, 50 years of guys getting together that started when he was in college. Mine started, I can tell you exactly 32 years ago because my youngest is my son, and he's 32. So I'm an old guy, like you. I've got, I've got a few.
My youngest is 42.
There you go. All right. So when Ben was born, I wasn't sure. He has two sisters, two older sisters, two girls. And when Ben was born, I was like, oh, we got a boy. Now I got to figure out how do you raise a man in this society? And I'm not even sure I've raised me yet. So I reached out to some friends who had a men's group, and I've been in that group of men. They meet on Sunday mornings. Now we meet online, but we used to meet, in person every Sunday morning. And we talk about what it's like to be a father, what it's like to be a good father. A lot of
Uh-huh.
people are processing their relationship with their dad or how that went to their mom and dad. And we help each other become better men and better people, but specifically around the issues that come up for guys. And I think that made me a better dad. I'm you can't run an A/B test. Maybe I would have been a terrible dad if I hadn't had the advice of these men. Most of these men are a little bit older than me, so they had been farther down the road, and they could mentor me. and they could mostly ask me good questions and keep me on my focal question of how do I raise a young man in this world, and how do I be a good dad for all my kids, my daughters as well. How do I model the behavior of a competent, loving, dad? And so that kind of community for me for the last 32 years has been a source of great joy. I've processed lots of my own issues there. I've helped other men, figure out what they want to become as they become father, grandfather. Many of a few men have died in 32 years, and so we've had a chance to grieve together and all the other things. So I think nowadays you kind of have to do a little bit of effort to reach out to folks and say, first, let's go get coffee and let's talk about this. Are you
Yeah.
looking for something like this? And then once you've got a couple of people who are saying, yeah, I think I'm looking for something like that, then you get together, and we have a whole protocol for this in the book about, finding a focal question for each person. And then how do we support each other on the journey of becoming the person who is working on that question? Dave will say the world is, in one of these grand generalizations, the world is divided into two kinds of people. People who are telling you about their lives and people who are living their question. The people who are performative and telling you about all the cool things they're doing are not the people that are going to work well in a formative community. The people who are living their question, the question of becoming and how to become a better version of themselves, not the perfect version, because we don't believe in that, but just the becoming a better version, living with the question, how to raise a young man in today's world, how to be a man in today's world and show up with the kind of, I don't know, authenticity and humility that I think is important. So it's
And vulnerability.
vulnerability.
And I think, you have,
Community where that's possible.
and you've given a great example to our listeners of what is available. In other words, go call your best friend right now and just say, let's go have coffee. I need to talk to you. Be vulnerable, be open.
Yeah.
Something is paining you. The Buddha always said, there'll be pain, but suffering is optional. So the question now becomes we're all going to have pains in our life. And that brings me to this, it's pretty contemporary relevance. And then we'll go to our closing question here.
Okay.
But you address you address what you call the weight of the world. You have a lot of Gen Z students asking you how they can focus on personal meaning, or how can they when there's just so much suffering and chaos in the world. Granted, there is, but if you look at historically, we've always had this pain and suffering.
Yeah.
We can go back decades from the Roman times, right? As a matter of fact, I think it might have been even worse back then.
Well, much worse if you look at the data. This is the lowest rate of poverty, the lowest rate of violence that we've ever had
Right.
in the history of man. But in your generation, for your time, it sure feels bad, right?
Well, so for those Gen Zers who are listening to this show, how do you respond without it being kind of glam or gib or minimizing their real issues and suffering, their suffering?
Right. Well, the first thing you do in any case, and design starts with empathy, is I listen to them a lot, and I witness what they're suffering about, and I try to understand it. I reflect back to them, and and a lot of different themes come up. But what about climate change? Are we even going to have a planet? Does it really matter if I work hard? Because companies don't care about people anymore. They lay them off as soon as they don't need them. Will I ever find a satisfying job or a way to express myself in the world? And those are real concerns, and they're real today, particularly, throw in AI and the uncertainty of, are there even going to be jobs, or is the world even going to be structured the way it's structured, or what the hell? And I don't have the answers to those things, but it does help to have a little bit of, a little bit more time on the planet, and been around the block a few times. I've seen this kind of chaos in Silicon Valley before, in the world before. This isn't the first time we've had, a political
Disruptive.
a disrupted political system. Go back. You want to go back, look at FDR stacking the court and trying to, get a third term. I mean, so one, a historical perspective can help. And two, then the question becomes, all right, well, we do live in a world of disruption and chaos. So then the question is, what can we do? To light a single candle or curse the darkness. The kid walking down the beach and he's throwing starfish back into the water, and an old guy comes back and says, yeah, you can't save all the starfish. There's millions of starfish. And the kid goes, yeah, but I saved that one. Right. So is there something you can do? Be the change you want to see in the world, Gandhi said. Nothing happens without an individual taking action. So be the individual who takes action and acknowledge that, yes, there is pain, but yes, there doesn't need to be suffering. Yes, there is chaos, but I can organize something to help people, even if it's simply locally, in my own neighborhood, in my own town, because that's where change starts. And you know this from your own work and with the homeless and other things. It's easy to say the homeless problem is unsolvable. There's nothing you can do. I'm not going to work on it. It's a waste of time. But that's not true, right? In your own personal experience that is not true, and that you can make a substantial change on it for any individual in that situation if you just care enough to do something. So one of the mindsets in the first book and mindset of all designers is biased action. We don't know how to predict the future. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. This is Alan Kay's a scientist at a fellow at Apple a long time ago. So the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And I'll say the best way to predict the future is design it. You don't like the outcome, design a better outcome. Take action, a bias to action, do something in the world, prototype something, build something, and see what happens, and move towards the light, move towards things that are positive. Design is inherently a neutral point of view. I'm not going to argue, politics or anything else. I'm just going to say the next design can be better than this one if we really understand the humans we're designing for. So,
and this will bring and I am too. And I would say to everyone listening, if you're still listening now, that this is meaning in your life, right? He's not trying to answer the philosophical question here, which he said way early on. And the true thing is that action, that small action, which makes a difference in how you feel, because all of us are feeling beings. We want to feel good. We want to be happy. We want to have joy. We want to have more purpose. So with that, Dave, I'm being Bill. I'm going to give you this closing question, because you and Dave are famous for saying, if you get the human part right, you can't go wrong. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as we wrap up, what does getting the human part right look like in the context of designing a meaningful life? And what's one thing someone listening right now could do today to take a step toward being more fully alive? And I'm going to underline fully alive.
Yeah, fully alive by design. So I mentioned this in the beginning. I'll wrap it up with this. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the most, one of the biggest ideas in social psychology ever, that we have a pyramid of needs, and at the top of that pyramid is self-actualization, which he described as being all that you can be, which is great, but it's a very ego-driven thing. Later in his life, and it was never published, but it was in his diaries, later in his life, he said, I think I didn't get it quite right. The top of the pyramid isn't satisfying your ego needs. The top of the pyramid is actually self-transcendence, going beyond oneself. Mm-hmm. So, what's interesting about self-transcendence is you don't have to get all the way through the pyramid, and self-actualize before you can transcend. Transcendence can occur at any time and a place. Very, poor people still struggling with their own, safety and security, which is at the bottom of the pyramid, can be self-transcendent. Self-transcendent is compassion. Self-transcendence is doing things for something other than yourself, for the pure joy and satisfaction of doing it. So even Maslow will tell you, it's not about you. It's about, everything else in the world. So the one thing I would say is, if you want to do one thing today that will make you feel like, hey, maybe I'm turning the corner, maybe I'm going in the right direction. Maybe I'd like to feel this way more often. This brought some meaning into my life. I'm still resting. I'll still, read Nietzsche for the meaning of life, the big question, but is to do something for someone else. A small act of kindness. Self-transcendence is the top of the pyramid, is where 3,000 years of wisdom traditions have said compassion, do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. All of that stuff is all now in the psychology and neuroscience of happiness. It's all about, so do something for someone else. And even if that's a very small thing, smile and say thank you to the barista when she hands you your coffee.
Or give her her name.
Yeah, and call her by name, and maybe just something a little riskier, like you said, go buy a gift card and go out to, where the guy sitting by the tent, with the homeless, with the little sign up saying, need food, and give him a $25 gift card so he can get some food and a warm beverage, and just smile and say, happy holidays. But
With no attachment.
you do
I think
something for somebody other than yourself, and you will experience a moment of meaning.
I would like to add to that too, and thank you for bringing that up. But you brought up a point, is you have to do it with zero expectation that they're going to do the right thing with it. You just
Oh yeah,
have to just give to give, not give to expect that something, is going to change.
Yeah.
It's
and that's be fully engaged in the act of giving, and
Right.
calmly detached from what happens. You're not, and that's partly also, you're not even sure what a good outcome is. Maybe that person will decide to give that card to a friend who needs it even more than he does.
And in all of this meaning that you're writing about, and you and Dave have written about, and now created another new, wonderful book, the whole designing or using design thinking to unlock purpose, joy, and find flow in everyday life is important. I'm going to reflect a second. Sunday, I was at Self-Realization Fellowship. I'm a devotee, and the monk was talking about these same similar concepts, just in a different way. And one of the things we know, because Bill has already mentioned it here, you kind of have to go out of self. And if that means, like, I know yoga is the connection with God, right? And there's one is spiritual and one is physical. We can do physical yoga and shift our whole mindset, shift everything that goes on after a yoga session. But then there's the science of yoga, which is the one where we attune to a higher power. That would be getting in touch with our intuition or something, or whatever you want to call it. Don't have to call it God, because I'm not going to get religious here. I'm going to get spiritual for a second.
Yeah.
This is important because this is the thing that's going to bring you more joy. It's going to bring you, unlock your purpose. It's going to bring you more flow. And so, Bill, to you and Dave, thank you during this time of year for releasing this wonderful book. It's coming out in February, everybody. So there's pre-orders now. So we're going to stick up a link. You can pre-order this book off of Amazon, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
And any other book site that that you like to go to. You don't have to always you don't have to always buy things from Amazon.
That's true. That's true. Although they're like that billion-pound elephant in the world.
I know.
So
Get
you're right.
rid of it,
We'll
but it
do
keeps
that.
coming back.
And if you would go subscribe to the newsletter. So there you're going to see the DYL workshop, the Design Your Life, how to live a meaningful life. And there's a video there, which the two of them, I really like it. They're sit with a backdrop of a window behind them, and they're both talking back and forth. Watch that video. Go pre-order this book. It's Designing Your Life. Just Designing Your Life. That's where you'll get it. Bill, happy holidays to you. Thank you. Namaste for being on Inside Personal Growth and sharing some time with our listeners about not only just designing your life, but bringing more meaning in your life. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. You've been incredibly generous with your questions and your time. So you have a great holiday as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Take care.